Welcome to Life on Maui. I'm your host, Stephen Freed. This will be our 50th show, so a new meaning for Hawaii 5-0, Maui 5-0, 50th Life on Maui show. And for this show, we're very honored to have our guest, Mark Sheehan, who has worked with Maui Tomorrow for over 2 decades in partnership with community groups and individuals on issues including alternative energy, food security, and the preservation of natural and cultural resources. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad you could come on today. I know you're a little under the weather, but you persevered.
Perseverance is what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So all this started with you coming to Maui in 1970, sleeping on McKenna Beach, and making a pact with God. What's that about?
Well, I realized it was an extraordinarily beautiful place, the most beautiful place I'd ever been. And I thought, how could I possibly live here? And I thought, if I could really figure out a way to live here, I would do whatever I could to kind of preserve it. Because I lived in California for 10 years, and I really saw what an impact 10 years of rapid development made. And I thought, the same thing is going to happen to this island. And I thought, if I could live here, I will really do what I can to keep it this way. And years later, my friend Rick Sands and Anthony Rankin and some friends decided, under Rick's inspiration, to work on preserving McKenna Beach.
Ah, that's wonderful.
And that was probably 30 years ago. And that took about 10 years. In the process, other environmental issues came up around the spraying of crops, especially proposals to spray cancer-causing crops on marijuana and
pineapple.
And spraying the pineapple. And they resulted in a series of lawsuits. And over time, the Sierra Club and some of the people who were founders of Maui Tomorrow thought, we really need an organization that focuses on protecting Maui's future. And Maui Tomorrow was born 22 years ago with a grant from a gentleman from California who loved the islands. And 3 people got together, Rick and Anthony and a man named Al Perez, and did what they called the build-out scenario, showing what the various communities would look like if all the allowable zoning, everything that was approved zoning, actually got built. And it alarmed people and got people thinking about the future of the island.
Well, SPAM, State Park at McKenna, bought up a bunch of properties 25 years ago?
We didn't buy it, actually, in anticipation of the next big hotel complex. Various speculators had bought it up, and so our goal was really to get the county and the state and the federal government to put up funds to buy back the beach. That was the plan, buy back the beach. And I remember at once going to the legislature and with colored pictures of McKenna Beach. And many of the legislators in Honolulu were astounded to say, wow, I didn't know you had a beach like that on Maui. But doing that kind of work made them realize that it was worth coming up with the funds to protect it.
And when you did these projections, at that point, you were looking in 1990, you said, at about 80,000 people on Maui, and you projected forward to what it might look like, 150?
There was small, medium, and large versions of interpretation that projected, I think, for the entire island something like 120, 170, and 220,000. And so we're probably midway, near the middle projection now at around 150,000. And we also proposed the idea of concurrency of infrastructure development, that you couldn't just go ahead and approve development without knowing where the water came from, where the roads would be, and so on. And as good an idea as that was, that wasn't how the county operates. They deal with the developments, and then they ask the water department to go find the water. And now we're involved, to look at what's going on today, the county, the state requires the county every 10 years to come up with a water development plan. And I think the county would really like to come to Haiku and in the belief that there's a lot of water in the Haiku aquifer that could be put into a system, into the central Maui system, but really it winds up in South Maui where all the development goes. The big question that I ask is, at this point, is to propose to spend $100 million that the county doesn't have in search of water that is rather uncertain because of changing weather patterns, less rainfall, in the prospect of growth that is very unlikely since we don't have any jobs to offer people.
That's an important feature right
why
there.
are we really looking at such expensive measures? What we propose instead is water conservation. And with medium to stringent water conservation measures, plugging leaks and other measures that can be taken, a lot of water that is being lost right now in the ditch system and other losses could be saved. And I think that's in a less expensive way. We don't really have that abundant water, and we don't have the resources. And I really think that the idea that we're going to have a lot of people moving here, I don't see it.
What do you think about that article in last week's Maui Time that was talking about how Maui could be a tech center?
Love that idea. You know, we actually built a tech park starting about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Didn't happen.
But the possibility's still there.
The possibility is still there.
Yeah.
You know.
And that could really...
We could also win the lottery. You know, that possibility is still there too. But I once reviewed this with some people from the tech world, and they said, look, the tech people move from project to project, and they don't want to get too far away from the Silicon Valley and the major tech centers because the project they're working on is going to be over, and they want to know where to move to. And plus, the venture capitalists are all over there. And and tech people who come here after a while sort of lose their edge because they get a mild version of Polynesian paralysis, or they decide they'd rather be kite surfing, or you know.
Is that what you call
Polynesian paralysis?
Right. Okay. Cute.
No, they you know, people come here and their heart goes one way and their mind kind of goes, you know, I'd rather follow my passion than be sitting and facing a computer.
But you know, one of the things I loved about that article was just the idea that people could, meet in the less formal environment. And
we do have extraordinary people. I sometimes tell people who are scouting for talent on the mainland, schools that are looking for certain people, you know, search right on Maui. We have a lot of talented people who are looking for challenges here. And with the STEM program that they're proposing in the schools and the colleges and the...
What is that, STEM?
Science, technology, engineering, and math, I think. Anyhow, there are funds to train kids with a passion for these studies and to give them more challenges. My thing about my educational background, I ran an experimental high school for a few years in California, is that young people want to be challenged. And if there's a problem with education is maybe they're not challenged enough. And so offering them a bigger challenge. My friend Paul Mitchell years ago had kids work on high school projects for solar cars. I think projects like that give the kids a 1 foot into the future. In my high school in California, we built 17 geodesic domes. We had 40 acres out in the country, and we couldn't have room to do that. And the kids were really thrilled. And then when we were through, we wrote a 100-page book on how to build low-cost housing.
Where was it? Where were you at this point?
That was in California.
California? Northern?
Santa Cruz Mountains.
Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
So,
so I think there could be a marriage of tech and people often talk about a high-tech center here. I thought, we have windsurfing and designers and board designers and so on, and there's some high technology in all the people who are designing those sports crafts. But we also have a lot of talented people in the computer field. There was the proposal that has come up to have a more movies made on Maui. I think that's a great idea.
Absolutely.
So there are ways that we could create jobs. Also, if we had a vision that the county we're putting out for, and the state we're put out, that Hawaii could be more of a retirement community for people who want to, around high-level wellness. I think you could create people who want to stay fit and, as they get older.
Well, one of the things that you said when we were chatting yesterday is that when you came here, you were looking for where's the Esalen of Maui?
Right.
Where is it? There should be an Esalen here, so to speak.
Yeah, and I, over the years, have worked in the area of fitness and high-level wellness, and not ecotourism, but kind of health and wellness tourism, where people come here and stay in one place, and they're studying yoga and tai chi and fitness and health, and look at all the cyclists who come here, for example, from all around the world to train for triathlons.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. You produced ARICA trainings for 10 years.
ARICA trainings for 10 years.
ARICA trainings for 10 years. And you stopped. Well, I'd like to hear a little bit about that, because 40-day training. But also you saying that you stopped because you wanted to see, you didn't see necessarily that personal transformation led to social transformation. And it seems like that's what really interests you more than anything, is social transformation as well as personal.
Well, if we don't preserve the environment, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And we've seen what years of neglect has created. We could have started the transition to the alternative environment 50 years ago, and we have lost all that opportunity because our country is controlled by the fossil fuel resource people and the nuclear people, who don't really want to admit the fact that those resources are declining and that they have a highly harmful effect on the planet. And so we didn't build this alternative platform. And even now, while we're in a financial recession, really an extended depression, when we should be creating jobs, which is the paramount issue, we still have those same forces trying to limit it. Right now, the debt crisis, the people who are fighting that battle are trying to limit the funds for the electrical vehicle and saying, well, if we solve this problem, let's get the funds over here on the electric vehicle thing. So as we allow China and other countries to take the initiative in the green technology, we are losing that technology and losing our opportunity to create the alternative energy platform that we really need. So we just have to think a little bit more resourcefully.
You started Landmark Realty in 1988, and it made an interesting comment that one of the reasons is because you need to have the money to pay for social transformation. And so you consider yourself a sustainable realtor. You still have your hand in it, right?
I do. I still have a real estate license. And people call me if they're looking for special projects, especially if they're looking for clean land and water resources, and they have a vision for sustainability and want to know what the best places are. And so the phone keeps ringing, and if they have resources and a pretty clear vision, then I'll work with them. But I'm not really going out and running around listing properties, and I'm trying to specialize with people who have that particular vision.
Yeah.
And there are more and more people who are thinking this way. We're living in a world, we're not going to go back into the past. We're going to be living in a world where we're going to live closer to home and drive less and fly less. What if I have a book that I read a while back called $20 a gallon. And we're at $4 a gallon now nationally, closer to $5 here. But when it goes to $6 a gallon, well, people fly less. And at $8 a gallon, the skies begin to thin out because planes aren't flying so much. And at $10 a gallon, at $8 a gallon, tourism may change radically here. And we have to remember, we're totally dependent on people flying here from far away. Plus, we still bring in 90% of our energy needs, mostly oil, Maui generates 13% of its energy from wind and solar, which is substantial.
Yeah, it is substantial.
And the state and the county have significant goals to increase that. And people are coming here with ideas and resources and new technologies, and they would like to try it out here. I met a few days ago with a guy who has a plan for an alternative energy vehicle rental network.
What a fantastic
because
idea.
a lot of people will try new things when they're on vacation.
Absolutely.
So, but you need to have a charging station in Hana, which is maybe the first or second place that people want to go, the most frequented place. But even though there's a lot of moving parts to make this happen, it's doable. And there will be a lot of buy-in from the companies and the various technologies and government agencies. It's, and will it take a while? Yeah. But you mentioned something when we were talking earlier about persistence. People who want to do things, who want to preserve the environment, who want to do innovations, have to have a vision, and they have to have financial resources, and they have to be persistent in working with the county and the state and overcoming obstacles.
You were one of the guys involved in putting a halt to the super ferry.
Maui Tomorrow and the Sierra Club and the Kahului Harbor Coalition, there were a lot of people. And again, talking about financial resources, because you mentioned that I used some of my gains in real estate to support legal actions. Well, that was about $100 million, or $100,000 effort legally, and half of that was raised locally, and another $25,000 came in from the people on Kauai, and another $25,000 came in from the Big Island. So people pooled those resources and were able to hire people to challenge the fact that the Super Ferry project didn't get an environmental impact statement. And we weren't against the Super Ferry as such. We were opposed to the fact that it was done without an environmental impact statement.
Uh-huh.
And we believed enough in the laws of the state to think that everybody should follow them. And so we wound up taking it all the way to the Supreme Court, the Hawaii Supreme Court, and they agreed with us.
Mm.
Then there was the governor at the time called a special session of the legislature in order to circumvent this ruling. And so we had to go back to the Supreme Court and say that that particular legislation favored one particular company, which is another violation of the Constitution. And once again, the Supreme Court agreed with us, but it did take funds to do it.
Well, it's interesting to hear that you weren't against the idea of the super ferry. It was just that it wasn't following the course that it needed to follow.
I mean, I think there were some practical things. The idea that it came right through the whale sanctuary was challenging. The speed of the super ferry, there were some practical things. But on an even more practical level, it took 12,000 gallons of diesel fuel to go from Honolulu to Kahului Harbor and back. Well, you got to think that's $30,000. How, they would have need to have that vehicle, that super ferry, half full. That means they would have had, some combination of a couple of, I think a couple hundred cars and 400 people on every passage. Never happened. So it was too big to begin with. So that was just one issue. But to speak a little bit more about Maui Tomorrow and why support is growing, because we've been around for 20 years and because we have tackled some of the big issues to protect Maui's future, not just by ourselves, but with the Sierra Club and other environmental organizations, sometimes with the Native Hawaiian Legal Defense Council and the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and groups that are involved in protecting particular water rights or streams. We've been able to achieve a lot by sustained effort and sustained support from the public. So people say, why do you do that?
Yeah.
We look around and no, we don't win all of our efforts, but we have achieved a lot of our goals, which is to educate the public and to educate decision makers about the fragility of the environment. We've tried to work with Hawaiian groups on issues of social justice. All of that is extremely gratifying, And whereas we lose a lot, we actually win a lot of those battles. And I think support has grown over the years as people have found out what Maui Tomorrow does and how effective we are. And people like to contribute financially or with their efforts so they can make a difference.
And you were saying that, you can correct my words, but something like you'd like to see Maui be the park for the world, playground for the world. There was something you said like that. What was that?
Well, it's like the park for the planet.
Park for the planet.
You know, there's only one Maui. It's not we're going to kind of screw this up and then move on to, you know, Tonga or someplace else.
There really is.
There's only one Maui.
Very special.
It's unique and a very special, as they always say, a fragile environment.
Yeah.
Well, let's treat it that way, and let's protect our reefs, which means we got to look at the runoff. Many of us live on the side of a 10,000-foot mountain. Well, there's a lot of runoff. There's techniques that could be applied, permaculture techniques and forestry techniques that could maintain and keep a lot of that water up on the hillside where it belongs instead of watching it run into the reef. Or when developers don't follow the rules and we do have reef damage, we're there on the scene, you know, and Akaku, to its credit, is often there showing what producers from Akaku do. They go out there and photograph this stuff so that the people in the community are informed.
Yeah, and on a very personal level, you bought an amazing piece of property a number of years ago, and you're turning a portion of it into a permaculture center. Is that accurate?
Yes, I sold part of the property,
Mm-hmm.
a third of the property to a very environmentally minded a couple from Santa Fe, and they liked the vision of developing a permaculture resource center, especially focusing on subtropical and tropical plants and medicinal plants. So we had a design team here the week before last, looking at the resources and coming up with a plan to further those efforts, and we set up a foundation to support that. And starting next year, we'll start giving trainings there.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And if people have really great ideas or good ideas, you're open to them running them by you, aren't you?
Of course, people regularly send us information and raise issues. The cane smoke issue has come up again, which has never really went away. It's just that the people who are concerned about it kind of give up, and then a new wave of people come along and say, well, you know, this is producing serious respiratory problems in our community, and you know, we really need to take a closer look at this and see if we can't really get the responsible parties to be more responsible and consider the health impacts. The same can be said for GMO. You know, here we have one of the larger open-air experiments on the planet with a technology that has a lot of critics.
Yeah.
And speaking to the county last week, I pointed out that if they Googled the dangers of Roundup, they would get 8,200,000 replies in 1/10 of a second.
Oh my God.
So there's information that's worth sifting. Nobody can really assess it all, but we can't just believe what the manufacturers say, because we're finding out more and more that there are harmful side effects. Going back 30 years ago with DBCP, which was sprayed on the pineapple fields at that time, we claimed that it was potentially cancerous and that it could get in the water supply. And at the time, Maui Pineapple said no. They were assured by the manufacturers, Dow Chemical, that it would bind with the soil and it couldn't get into the water supply. Well, it turned out to be wrong. It does get in the water supply.
Of course.
And now that issue is back haunting us because we have the proposal to use the H-Poco wells, the Hamakua-Poco wells above Ho'okipa, those two wells, and we know that the water coming out of those wells is contaminated. So it's an environmental issue, but it's also a political issue.
Yeah. And 37% of the agriculture here is the GMO corn?
The recent statistics show that for the state of Hawaii, over a third of the agricultural production comes from Monsanto.
Wow.
And that there are 1,800 people who work on the islands of Maui, Molokai, and Lanai, and Oahu, excuse me. And I think there's something like 6,000 acres. And I think we have 5,000 of those acres here
Oh my goodness.
on Maui,
Wow.
and over 600 employees. And it generates $14 million of tax revenue. So in hard times, you have what I consider to be a risky crop, and yet we feel like we need the money,
Yeah.
and we need to keep those people employed. But how about future generations who might be affected by the consequences of using those things, and we find out 10 or 15 or 20 years from now? So I feel that the precautionary principle should prevail. When in doubt, exercise caution. And on this particular issue that the county was considering, which is an ordinance for labeling, of course people should label. If they think it's such a radical innovation that it's patentable and therefore they can control it, then they should put it on the package so that we know.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is required to be put on the package.
Absolutely.
So,
We'll talk about future generations. You have a doctorate in higher education research. Colorful background. You had mentioned it earlier. You were part of a experimental school in Northern California in the 60s. You were an anti-war activist. You have a lot of, talk a little bit about
I
that.
have a checkered career.
Talk a little bit about that time.
Well, it was not difficult to be involved in opposing the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
In the 60s, I had lived in Europe, and when I got back in 1964 to Berkeley, California,
Where did you live in Europe?
I taught in Turkey, and then I taught in Spain and in France.
And what were you teaching?
I was teaching English as a second language.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But anyhow, I came back, and I was involved in anti-war activity in Berkeley, and I decided while I was there I would work on a doctorate in education because I was interested in making a difference in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finished my doctoral studies at Berkeley, a job came along for a director of an experimental high school in the Santa Cruz Mountains called Pacific High School.
Uh-huh.
And it was the late 60s, so there was a lot of rebellious kids in the school to deal with who had their own ideas and wanted to be free. And
what do teenagers want to do, right?
Well, we've all been there.
Yeah.
Think about what you wanted to do.
Exactly.
It wasn't sit in the
Sex,
classroom.
drugs, and rock and roll.
Well, that was actually the core curriculum.
That's right.
And so my job was to really figure out ways to challenge those kids to do something more than they thought they could handle. And so we had a curriculum going to Mexico. We had a group of students who were in Oaxaca, Mexico for almost the entire year. We had building projects. We had studies of logging operations. And probably the most successful challenge was when the students all had to build their own housing. And so building 17, as I said, geodesic domes. With winter coming on, they were inspired to really not just sit around and get stoned, but to really rise to the occasion. And they were inspired. We had great teachers, and they saw the opportunity. And then when winter came in, we asked Stuart Brand, who was putting together the Whole Earth Catalog, just down the road from us, if he would publish it if we put something together, and he said he would. And so by the end of the winter and by spring when it came out, we had a 100-page book that explained to people how to build low-cost housing.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
You've had a very colorful life on Maui, haven't you? Very colorful life here, and you were one of the first members of Maui Tomorrow, and now you are the only original member left, correct?
Right, I keep waiting for them to give me the gold watch so I can go away. And but it's the best conversation in town. There's a monthly meeting. The people who work with Maui Tomorrow are inspired and committed. We do have the advantage of having a full-time coordinator, Irene Bowie, who does a fantastic job. And we have the benefit of Lucien Dene, who works on water issues. But we have the support from a very wide community on water issues, coastal issues, sewage treatment issues, the Dyer Coalition. There are coalitions all over this island. My take on Maui is it's the gift that never stops giving. And it's the best community I've ever witnessed because people love it so much that they care to show up, speak up, and make a difference. And if there's a takeaway to this interview here, it's to encourage people to do just that. To realize that they can really have an impact in their lives because of their passion.
Oh, what a wonderful thing. What's your vision for Maui of tomorrow? I know you'd like to pass the baton to someone at this point, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe there's somebody out there watching this show and they're going to be inspired and they can say, well, he looks like he's getting long in the tooth. Maybe he's ready to be replaced. And I just want to let people know that it's very gratifying to do this kind of work and to see that there are places that look better now than when I first saw them. There's I think there was one stoplight when I got here in 1970, so the traffic doesn't look better. But I know that the hotels are working on environmental projects and and becoming more efficient and reducing their electrical costs and doing a great many things to look at alternative energy resources. At every level that I look at, I see people are trying to adapt to the kind of changes. And because the changes are happening so rapidly, we need to work together with students and business people and the politicians and the environmental activists and the Hawaiian rights people to pull together and make Maui a model. People often say, well, this could be a model. And especially because we're getting it to be a priority for electrical vehicles, which requires a lot of buy-in from the people who make the charging stations and federal grants and support programs for the Maui College and the entrepreneurs who want to get into the system and the Maui Electric and the adaptations they have to go through. But I think it's happening, and we could see that Maui could be a model for more self-sufficient place.
Absolutely.
Someone gave me an idea last week of Maui being like a permanent fair for displaying sustainable technologies. And I think people would say, we're going to go on vacation, and not only can we go to a beautiful place and stay in a nice hotel or a condominium, but we could kind of go and look at all the new technologies. Years ago, I went to, when I was at my high school, I was invited by a woman at the, I think it was called the Rosenberg Foundation. Ruth Chance was her name in San Francisco, and she said, well, Mark, we see that if innovation takes place in the public schools, it's hard to get it started. And if it takes place in private schools, it's hard to transfer to the public schools. And I said, the Whole Earth Catalog is so inspiring. What if in a city like San Francisco, you had a bus pass program so all the kids could go to the Cow Palace or One Central Place and play with all the new technologies? Because we used to take our students to the computer fairs and things like that. And that was before the Exploratorium was innovation came along. And she loved that idea. And so I think that we could kind of see Maui as people could come here, look at people who use the bio beetles, for example, to drive out to Hana. And they go, wow, these cars, are just burning vegetable oil. And when we get the electrical vehicle programs, when people are on vacation, they're open and receptive to new ideas and new technologies and new ways of thinking. So Maui could be the place where people could kind of test drive the future. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And we also would like to see way more food production on the island. And I'd hate to see it in some way compromised by what I consider to be radical experiments like genetically modified organisms, where we see that the organic fields can be contaminated by overspray from other fields that are genetically modifying their technologies.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's happening, but we should certainly take the precaution of testing to find out if it is happening.
Absolutely.
I do happen to sell properties to people who want to live an organic lifestyle and are very concerned about pollution. It's one of the reasons why they move here. And so they'll call me up and saying, well, where can I find a clean piece of land?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but if we grew more of our food, if we could increase, the state brings in, I think, pays about $7 billion for imported fuel and about $5 billion for imported food. And I always think that Maui is about 10% of the state. So if you think that we're spending somewhere in the area of Maui County of $1.2 billion importing food and fuel, and you think, if we could cut back 10% of that and by generating more of it here, that'd be a lot of jobs, if we're talking about jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to realize that, they always say, well, the environment is the economy. Well, yeah, and a sustainable environment could be a more vibrant and more attractive economy. Many of the hotels now are buying food, organic food from upcountry, and then you have the Kapalua farms with a couple hundred acres of being developed out there of organic foods to supply the hotels on the west side. There's a lot going on that's very inspiring here.
Yeah, yeah. I love your vision, and I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to spend this time with you.
Absolutely.
All right.
So thank you, and thank you for joining us on this auspicious 50th Life on Maui show. So if you need to contact Mark for any visions that you may have that are something you want to work on, you can do so, and take this to heart. This is really important stuff. We live in one of the most beautiful places here, and it can be really a model for the world. So thank you, and until next time, aloha.
Call me crazy, but I'm never